Hey everyone, it's Tommy here with PSP at 14 Wing Greenwood. Today we're going to go over Olympic weightlifting for beginners. So we're going to follow a similar path like we did with our powerlifting video. We're going to look at common injuries, how to train to avoid them or prevent them, and then we're going to look at training for sport performance with Olympic weightlifting. Here's a really quick overview. There's two main lifts we're looking at when it comes to Olympic weightlifting. The first one is the clean and jerk, and then we have the snatch. Go over those more in detail as we go. Just wanted to outline those before we got started. All right, so when we're looking at common areas for injuries in Olympic weightlifting, looking at the lower back, the neck, the shoulders, and the thoracic spine. So obviously when you see videos of the Olympic lifts, you can kind of understand why these might be common areas where we see injuries. Obviously a lot of stress on those areas, a lot of mobility required, but also a lot of strength in those positions where we need extreme mobility. So the first one we're going to look at is training for the neck. So our main focus here is adding stability and also what we call armor building. So with our neck, a lot of the time Olympic weightlifters will end up with disc issues, and there's not a specific way really that we can train to avoid that, but we can build armor around our discs, around the neck, to try and prevent those from occurring. So the specific muscles we're looking at, so we have our sternocleidomastoid, that's our SCM. If you kind of turn to one side, you can see where that muscle is on your neck on either side. And then we have our middle trapezius and our anterior scalene. So these are the main muscles we're going to target when we're trying to do armor building around the neck to try and prevent future neck injuries. And so we're going to look at two different exercises, kind of three, but they're grouped together. So our first one that we're looking at is isometric lateral neck hold. So we're going to do this with a resistance band, or if you're lucky enough to have a neck cable attachment, you could use that as well. So the individual is going to set up with the band tied to a rack or something sturdy, and it's going to be about chest height. So you're going to have the band around your head, right about forehead level, kind of where your hairline might be, and then you're just going to stand, walk away from the post that's holding it, and hold that position. So you can start doing 5 seconds, 10 seconds at a time, and then slowly building time or using a heavier band as you go. So you're going to do each side, really challenge the lateral stabilizers, the lateral muscles of the neck, and hopefully prevent future injury around that area. Then we're looking at isometric neck holds and flexion and extension. So we're not really going to move that far with these exercises. All we're going to do for our extension exercise, we're going to have the same setup with our resistance band. It's wrapped around a rack, some sort of sturdy post. Then we're going to put it so the band is wrapped around the back of our head, so we'll be facing whatever post we're using. Then you're going to step back and you're going to hold that position. So we're just trying to not let the head travel forward, trying to hold it back in that extension position. Then when we're looking at flexion, very similar idea, except this time the resistance is going to be at the front of on our forehead. So you're going to be facing away from the post with the resistance band around your forehead, and we're just stepping into it, trying to hold that position, not letting the band pull you back too far. Really, again, we're working those isometric holds with the neck. We don't need a ton of flexion and extension when we're loading it. We really want to use isometric exercises to build up that armor around the neck, hopefully prevent some injuries going forward. All right, then we're looking at the thoracic spine. So when we're talking about the spine, we're looking for lumbar stability, thoracic mobility, and then cervical mobility and stability. So the thoracic component, our big focus is going to be on mobility. So that thoracic spine, our mid-spine area, we really need it to be mobile, especially in Olympic weightlifting, where if our thoracic spine isn't mobile, then it's really going to be made up for with our lower back. So we really want to focus on letting that thoracic spine move as it's supposed to. And yes, just so preventing anything like our hips or our low back from trying to pick up the slack from what our thoracic spine can't do. Or again, looking at our shoulders, the thoracic spine being mobile enough, preventing our shoulders from having to do more work than they need to. So the first exercise we're going to look at is a quadruped T-spine rotation. So a great way to eliminate the low back when we're looking at rotational spine exercises is to have knee flexion. So in our quadruped position, both knees are bent, they're in line with our hip. That kind of that locks our low back in place. And as we rotate through, we know we're only going to be using our thoracic spine. Then we've got some progressions from that exercise. So first one is a side lying T-spine rotation. So when we're doing the side lying T-spine rotation, the individual is lying on their side, their top leg. So I'm laying on my right arm. If my right arm's on the ground, Then I'm pulling my left leg up to 90 degrees and rotating my left arm all the way around, trying to reach the floor on the other side. Then we have our sideline T-spine sweeps. So this is a progression from our T-spine rotations where the setup is the same. So I've got my left leg up at 90 degrees. I'm lying on my right side, and I'm going to raise my arm, sweep all the way around my head, trying to reach back towards the floor again. And with those, really easy way to start is just doing 8 to 10 on each side, really trying to open up that thoracic spine, get that moving before we go into our training. So this is really easy to add into our warm-up. You can add to your cool down, or if you have recovery days, you're taking days off, this is a great exercise you can add in. All right, then we're looking at the shoulder. So we looked at this with powerlifting, we looked at this with racket sports, and again, it's coming up here with our Olympic weightlifting. It's a really common area for injuries, especially in Olympic weightlifting where it's loaded quite heavy in areas that it needs to be mobile and to be stable. So our main focus here, we're gonna look at stability, but going forward, we'll also address different mobility things you can do to try and get in better positions while you're performing the Olympic lifts. So specifically today, we're gonna look at 3 exercises. We have the overhead squat. So this is a big contributing factor, especially to the snatch. So being able to be stable in that bottom position of an overhead squat. So when we're starting, a good way to think about starting your overhead squat is have your pinkies, again, we're on the smooth rings on the bar, pressing the bar up over our head, and then we're just trying to sit down and back, trying to keep our chest nice and tall. We're really trying to avoid falling forward or letting our chest collapse. A great way to do these would be following your thoracic, your T-spine mobility drills. So we can get that mobility, and then we can load it and try and use it so it transfers over to our lifts. Then we have an overhead carry. So you guys may have seen this before when we were looking at strength training for racket sports. So an overhead carry is a great way to improve our overhead stability. Again, this is huge in Olympic weightlifting, whether it's a catch and a snatch or the catch and the jerk. You're pressing overhead or locking out overhead with heavy loads, and we need to be stable when we're doing that. So an overhead carry is a great option. So in an overhead carry, you can use a dumbbell or you can use a kettlebell. You're just pressing the dumbbell or the kettlebell overhead when you're walking, trying not to let your arm bend at all, trying to keep it completely straight and trying not to tilt side to side as you walk. Then finally, we're gonna have our cable external rotation. This is one we really like here because a lot of the time these external rotating muscles of the shoulder don't get any work with most of our exercises. They're kind of typically underdeveloped and then can lead to injury when we need them. A lot of people don't have them. So we're gonna use a cable external rotation again here. We've used it before in the past. It's just one we really like. So with the cable external rotation, you're just holding that elbow nice and tight to your side, grabbing a single arm cable attachment, and then you're externally rotating, trying to keep your elbow on your side. So we're not reaching way out with our arm. We're trying to keep that elbow nice and tight, rotating just what we're able to without our elbow coming off of our side. So those are 3 exercises we're looking at for trying to prevent shoulder injury in Olympic weightlifting. All right, then again, we're looking at the low back. So like I said before, if we don't have the thoracic mobility, it's really common that our low back will make up for it by going into extreme extension. And extension under load, obviously that can be a risk for injury. So what we're gonna look at again here is the McGill Big 3. We went over with our powerlifters. It's something we would add in for our Olympic weightlifters as well. So it's gonna look at the plank and the side plank paired together, where we're starting in a side plank, rolling over to a front plank, and then rolling over to the other side in a side plank. Then we've got our bird dog. So we're starting on all fours in our quadruped position, reaching out with our opposite arm, opposite leg, and we're gonna hold that position for 10 seconds. Here we're really focused on that core endurance. Like we said before in our powerlifting video, core strength is important, but core endurance is the one that is more preventative of injury when you're looking at the research. And then we have the McGill curl up. So in our McGill curl up, this is kind of a spine safe sit up that we like to program in. So the individual is gonna start lying on the ground with one knee bent, one leg is straight out. Then you're gonna have your hands in the hollow of your low back. You're raising your elbows, your shoulders, and your neck just off the ground. Again, holding for 10 seconds and then relaxing. We'd really like to program for people here at 14 Wing Greenwood. We like to do 3 with one knee bent, switch sides, and do 3 with the other knee bent. That way we make sure we're keeping things symmetrical as we train. All right, so then we've gone through our injury prevention tactics. Now we're gonna look at training for performance. First thing we're gonna start with is the clean. So we're just gonna give you guys some things to think about while you're performing the exercise, along with some videos that'll show you demonstrations so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the first thing we're gonna look at is our clean start position. So when we start with our grip, a really good way, a good benchmark when you're planning your clean grip is to put your thumb at the edge of the knurling. So where the knurling starts, that's where you're gonna have the end of your thumb, and that should be about your grip width. Again, this is just a benchmark, kind of gives you an idea of where you can start. It doesn't have to be where you stay forever, but try it out. Try starting at that point and see if that's comfortable. If you need to adjust going forward, then that's fine as well. Then we're gonna look at our feet. So a good way to think about our cleans is just to go where you would jump from. So if you were to set up for a vertical jump, that's likely gonna be one of the most powerful positions you're gonna be able to set up in. So think about where you would go to jump. If you had to jump to a box or if you're doing a vertical jump test, that's where we're gonna start with our clean. And again, this is just a benchmark. You can play around with it from there, try and see what works best for you. Then we're looking at our hip height. So the big thing here is we don't wanna start too low and have wasted movement at the start. We don't wanna start too high and have wasted, or have a risk of having our hips come up too high and then putting more stress on our low back. So the big thing here is just finding that right height kind of in between. So we should feel some tension. So we should be pulling the slack out of the bar. So our hips shouldn't be down and relaxed, but they shouldn't be way up above our shoulders. And then once we actually do the pull, the big thing we're looking at is triple extension. So when we're picking the bar up off the ground, we're pulling it before we get to the catch position. The big thing we want to do is extend at our ankles, our knees, and our hips. So this is the big thing you'll hear a lot when looking at Olympic weightlifting is triple extension. So we're extending, coming up on our toes, knees and hips are extending together, and then you're finishing through with your catch. So when we're looking at our catch, the big thing we want to think about is our grip, our feet, and our hips. So whether it's a power clean or it's a full clean where you're catching it down in a squat position, with our hips, we want to sit down and back. So we're trying to sit back so we can catch that load in a nice stable squat position, whether it's in the full front squat or just in a power catch position where it's almost like a quarter squat. We're trying to sit our hips down and back. Then we're looking at our feet. So when we catch our clean, our feet are going to come a little bit wider than where we started, but we're not trying to get crazy. We're still trying to have them in a good position that we can front squat out of. So if you catch a clean in the bottom, you want to know that your foot position is going to allow you to just perform a regular front squat. So we're starting a little bit narrower than where we would squat. And when we catch, we're going to come out a little bit wider and should be right around where we would perform a front squat. Then our grip when we catch. So this can be kind of nerve-wracking when you catch a clean. A lot of times you'll see people kind of almost death grip the bar, and that prevents their elbows from being able to come through. So when we catch our clean grip, when we catch our clean, our grip can be quite loose. So really all we need to do is have a couple fingers on the bar in the catch position. That way it keeps the bar on our shoulders. All right, so then we've caught the bar. Now we're gonna look at doing the jerk. So the clean and jerk is done together. We're gonna break it up in the videos and our explanation just to give you guys a bit of a broader idea of what you can do while you're training. So three things to think about. Here are the wrist, the dip and drive, and then our feet. So when we're catching the clean, our wrists and our elbows, we're trying to get them horizontal so we can get the best catch position that we can. But when we go into our jerk, that's when our wrists and our elbows are going to drop down into more of a vertical, like more of a shoulder press position. This will give us a little bit more power when we're ready to jerk the bar overhead. And then when we dip, so once we catch our clean, we're standing tall. What we mean by a dip is you're going to have a soft bend in your knees. You're going to dip down, and then as hard as you can, you're pushing through. And with that great vertical wrist position, you're going to be able to push through and lock the jerk out. And then when we finish, so typically we'll see people finish with a split jerk. So they're stepping forward and backward with their feet, trying to lock out that overhead position. So the thing we want to think about here is just stepping forward, almost into a lunge position, but not quite as low. So again, this will be kind of one you have to play with as you go. A good way to think about it is just a little bit shorter than a lunge. So that's a good way to think about when you're starting. And again, you have to play with it, see how it goes as you train more, see what's more comfortable for you. Some people will go much longer, some people will go more narrow. You just have to figure out what works best for you, but a good benchmark is going into a lunge position or something slightly shorter. All right, then we're going into the snatch. So in our start position, again, we're looking at our grip, our feet, and our hips. So we didn't go over it too much with our clean and jerk, but a big thing in Olympic weightlifting is the grip that you use. So in the snatch, a good benchmark to have is to have your pinkies on the rings, or on the metal, like the smooth metal rings along where the knurling is. And then you can get wider as you feel more comfortable, or if you feel like your arms are too close together. Again, it's just a benchmark, so you can go pinkies, maybe ring fingers, and slowly slide out. Find out what's most comfortable for you when it comes to your grip. Another thing with grip in Olympic weightlifting, you don't have to use it right away, but a really common grip is the hook grip. So instead of just grabbing onto the bar like you normally would, you're going to grab on and you're going to wrap your thumb around the bar first. So your thumb is coming under the bar, and then your fingers are coming over top of your thumb, and then your last two fingers are grabbing onto the bar. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable when you start, but it's a great way to allow you to transition quicker to your lockout phases in the snatch and to turn over your elbows in the clean. Again, it can be fairly uncomfortable when you start, but it's a good thing to get used to as you start to add load, and your grip can become a limiting factor. And then again, we're looking at our hips. So in the snatch, our hips can start a little bit higher, and that's okay. You don't need to start super low, again, because then we're going to deal with wasted movement. So you'll find if you take a video of yourself, if you start way too low, then odds are your hips are going to rise before the bar starts to move. We're kind of wasting that movement. So let your hips come up a little bit more. Feel some tension in the bar, some tension in your hamstrings before you pull from that snatch start position. And then again, we're looking at triple extensions. So when we pull, we want to extend at our ankles, our knees, and our hips, really getting our whole body involved. So ankles, we're coming up on our toes, extending the knees and hips forward, pushing our hips forward all at the same time. And then we're going into the pull phase of the snatch. So the big thing we want to think about in our pull phase is where our elbows are going. So we want to pull our elbows up to the ceiling. We don't want to pull short, and what I mean by that is you don't want to bring our elbows just up slightly and then try and turn over, because that's really going to limit the amount of load we can use, and it's going to really interfere with our catch position. So what we want to think about is pulling our elbows all the way up to the ceiling, and then when we can't pull them any higher, that's when we're turning over and going into our catch position. So when we go into our catch position, we're looking at our elbows, our wrists, our feet, and our head position. So when we catch our elbows, we really want to turn them out really quickly, have completely straight arms, almost like we're trying to turn our elbows up to the ceiling. With our wrists, the same idea. We're just trying to lock them out as quickly as possible, not letting them flex or bend at all. We're trying to really lock in that catch position. And our feet, again, similar to the clean, we're going to start a little bit more narrow than where we would do an overhead squat from, so that when we jump out, go through our triple extension and into our snatch catch, then we can go into where we would overhead squat from. So we're starting a little bit more narrow than where we would overhead squat from, and then we're going to finish a little bit wider right at our overhead squat position. Then we're looking at our head. So a big issue that people will have is not being able to push their head through to finish their lift. So what we want to do when we catch, we're going to snap our elbows out, trying to rotate them up to the ceiling. Wrists are locked in a strong position, and then we're going to push our head forward, trying to maintain that upright position as we stand up from the snatch. So hopefully these tips and the videos that you'll see were helpful, and hopefully you can add them to your training. Let us know how it works for you. If you guys have any questions going forward, just let us know. And as we progress, we're going to get into more complicated topics around Olympic weightlifting, such as programming, different accessory lifts, and then preparing for competition. Thank you.